Listeners, Donovan is a nutritional physiologist. His research aims to better understand how materials move through the gut, which enzymes are secreted during digestion, what microbes are present, and what role these microbes play. In particular, Donovan focuses his research on animals with unusual diets, such as fish that eat wood or algae, to understand how these foods are digested and how animals can survive on these lower quality foods. And he shared some fantastic stories about his life, his lab, and his research. So I hope you enjoy this episode of People Behind the Science.
Every day, discoveries are made that will change our understanding of the world around us. Dr. Marie McNeely is here to bring you the brilliant minds who are making these discoveries so they can share their incredible stories and take you on an amazing journey. Welcome to People Behind the Science.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to People Behind the Science. Today, I am thrilled to be speaking with our guest scientist, Dr. Donovan German. So, Donovan, welcome to our show today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful. We are so excited to learn more about you and your research during our conversation today. But let me first start by telling our listeners just a little bit about you. So, listeners, Donovan is Associate Professor of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology in the School of Biological Sciences at the University of California, Irvine. He received his bachelor's degree in marine science from the University of San Diego, his master's in biology from California State University in Fullerton, and his Ph.D. in zoology from the University of Florida. Afterwards, Donovan conducted postdoctoral research at UC Irvine before joining the faculty there in 2011. His awards and honors include receiving the UC President's Postdoctoral Fellowship, the UCI School of Biological Sciences Dean's Award for Postdoctoral Excellence, and also the UCI School of Biological Sciences Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Fostering Undergraduate Research. And in our conversation today, Donovan is going to share more about both his life and his science. So, Donovan, we're excited to learn about your scientific side, but we also want to know more about you as a person. So can you start by telling us what you like to do when you're not doing science?
So I have a strong sports background. I actually played football through university at University of San Diego. So I've always loved sports. And once we had kids, of course, I got into coaching their teams. So I coach baseball and soccer, and that really consumes a lot of my time outside of school because I have to leave work sometimes around 3 p.m. to go to practice or games. So that definitely is a bit time consuming. And I also play music. I'm a bassist by trade, but I also play guitar and dabble a little bit in the drums.
Fantastic. And I understand you have quite a storied history of being in a rock band. Do you still play in a band today?
I'm no longer in what I would call a band, but yeah, I was in a band for quite a bit of time during my undergrad. We recorded a couple of EPs. A lot of that music's actually available through my website if you can dig through and find it. But now I pretty much play with my kids because they're all learning to play. My oldest is growing into quite a saxophone player, so I spend a lot of time playing music here at home.
I love it. Family jam sessions. And you mentioned coaching as well. What sports do they play?
Baseball and soccer are the two that I coach, and then my oldest just played tackle football as well.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, great to hear more about life outside the lab, but I'd love to talk about your science as well. So, Donovan, can you tell me how you describe the research that you do to people who are outside your field or maybe outside of science entirely?
So I consider myself a nutritional physiologist. And in short, that means I study how guts work. And our own gut, the human gut, is fascinating, but it's actually really hard to study the human gut because the best way to be able to study it is to ultimately be able to take it out of the animal to do more detailed manipulations of it. So I use fishes mostly as my model to get into how they make a living. How does the gut move stuff through? What are the microbes that are there? What roles are they playing? What enzymes are being secreted? All of these things matter in terms of understanding how our guts work. And we tend to focus on kind of the oddballs of the animal kingdom with organisms that eat wood, for example, or algae, to really gain insight to what happens when we eat lower quality foods and what is required for that.
Very interesting. Well, Donovan, I look forward to chatting in more detail about some of your projects as we go through our conversation today. But I'd love to touch on motivation here in the beginning. I think for me, it's helpful to have some motivational messages or quotes or sayings in my mind as I get up and get ready to sort of attack my day. So do you have favorite sayings or quotes that really motivate you or resonate?
I am a big Tom Petty fan. So I Won't Back Down is one of my favorite songs. And I definitely feel that that is something that I get inspired by, because on a day-to-day basis, sometimes challenges seem too daunting. But having that I'm not going to back down mentality has really helped kind of drive me through.
I like it. You got your background jams for a bad day, right?
That's right.
Very cool. Well, great to hear about what motivates you, some of these songs that you really enjoy. And I think song lyrics can be really powerful motivators. But I'd love to talk about some of the people next who might have motivated or inspired you. So, Donovan, do you have role models or inspirational figures or people that you've just looked up to throughout the course of your life?
There's so many of them. Mm-hmm. And it's really amazing. So going back to the importance of mentors in my life, I did 2 years at Fullerton College right out of high school. So I didn't go straight to university. I went to a community college first. And it was actually an oceanography class there taught by Carolyn Heath, who is still there at Fullerton, that really inspired me to go into marine biology in the first place. So every step of the way, I try to send her a message. Hey, thanks for inspiring me. I'm now going to get a master's. Then thanks for inspiring me. I'm getting my Ph.D. Or thanks for inspiring me. I'm now a faculty member just up the road from you. Yeah. Those kinds of things. And they really appreciate it. And now that I'm a faculty member, I really appreciate hearing back from the students who I've inspired. So it's really important, these important moments in your life where someone really inspires you to do something you didn't think you might be able to do. So Carolyn Heath at Fullerton, and then obviously got to San Diego. And that's a small school, so there's lots of chances for interactions with faculty. So Sarah Gray, who's been the chair of their marine science program for a little while, Michelle Boudria, Ann Sturs, and it just goes on and on. The people who were there and really inspired me to go on in science. And then once I did go to grad school, Dr. Michael Horn, who I did my master's degree with, just absolutely still a father figure, someone I look up to, and I'm going to actually go have tea with him next week. So it really changed how I viewed science, taught me how to write, so that by the time I got to Florida to do a PhD, my doctoral advisor, Dave Evans, was like, hey, you write really well. And I couldn't always write that well. Mike Horn really steered me in that positive direction. So, of course, then once I was at Florida, there was many mentors there with Dave Evans, Karen Bjorndal, and Doug Levy was really important on my committee as well. Big names to me at the time in my field in physiology. And then here at UC Irvine with Steve Allison, who I ended up doing a postdoc with. He's actually younger than me by a couple years, but he just really sets the tone, I think, on how to be a good scientist and a good mentor himself.
Well, Donovan, I love that you've kept in touch and sort of followed up with a lot of these mentors and role models over the years, because I think you're absolutely right. Being on the other side of it, it's really rewarding to get those quick emails or a note from a previous student who you've really had an impact on.
Yeah, and no one is where they are without mentors along the way. It's always about the people. So when I prepared this lecture about my own academic journey and the mentors that are there, I kept referencing it's about the people you're with. The science is great, but at the end of the day, it's the people you remember the most and the interactions.
Certainly. So on the subject of your academic journey, can we go all the way back to the beginning, Donovan? And can you share what first sparked your interest in science?
I've always loved fish. Really got into freshwater angling as a youth, and then kind of fell out of love with that for a while because of sports and whatnot in high school, hormones, things like that. Right? Mm-hmm. Got more interested in chasing girls and things like that. But coming back, I got more serious about academics again in college. It was the science classes that inspired me the most. So at first I was going to declare as an engineering major in college, but then I took that all-important oceanography class with Carolyn Heath, and it was on a field trip to Upper Newport Bay, which is actually not very far from where I'm sitting right now, where I was just like, wow, this is so cool. I want to understand how organisms can really deal with the environmental fluctuations here in an estuary. They have to deal with different ion concentrations, temperatures, being in and out of the water. I just thought it was all so amazing, the complexity of things that these animals had to deal with. And if you start thinking about it, physiology is a bit like reverse engineering, where rather than making something to work in a certain way, you're trying to figure out how something found a way to work within some sort of parameters. So that's really the kind of science I do, is figuring out how organisms are able to deal with problems. And the problem I study is digestion. Mm-hmm. It's kind of where it started, I would say, is once I got into school and getting inspired by an instructor in a class.
Absolutely. Well, I love this story. And I'm curious, how did you decide to make a career out of science, or how did you know what path to follow from that point where you started getting interested in it?
So once I got to San Diego, and I wasn't even thinking of San Diego until they were really recruiting me for football. So once I got down there on a recruiting visit and I saw they had a really good marine science program, I got to meet some of the faculty. Once you're there and you're talking to them, you realize that they have an idea of lots of different career paths that you could take with that kind of degree, and that you're going to get the one-on-one time you need to really get that information from them. So it starts there with that first interaction where you're like, okay, I think I can trust these people to steer me in the right direction to do the career I want. And then once I was there and got embedded into research and had good research ideas of my own, that's when I started to think about an academic career. And they were encouraging, okay, so here's how you do it. You go to grad school and so on and so forth. And they steered me in the right direction.
Definitely. So how did you choose the University of Florida for your PhD program?
I can't say I did my journey alone, right? So my wife and I were both master's students at Cal State Fullerton. That's when we got married. And we were looking around mostly at schools here on the West Coast. We both work on marine systems. We both, of course, loved West Coast, grew up here. But then I was at a conference, the American Physiological Society meeting in San Diego in like 2002. And I happened to be near this guy, David Evan. His poster was near mine. And so we started talking, and he told me, hey, I used to work on those fish that you study right now. And he did. He did his PhD on the very same fish that I was studying. And I was looking at his poster and talking to him. I had no idea who I was talking to. Then I went home and looked at my bookshelf, and I had 3 of his books.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, my God, that's him. Because he's the editor and author of the Physiology of Fishes series.
You were starstruck at that moment, yeah.
Yeah, at that moment, I was like, oh, my God. So just meeting him by chance at a conference. And again, it was probably like August of 2002. It's right before the application season because that's in the fall. So I asked him that day, hey, do you accept students there? And he's like, yeah. And so you should apply. Like, okay, great. So then we started poking around, looking at their website, and realized, you know what, there are people here that I could work with. And she found people she could work with. And so we ended up applying. And then you go on recruitment visits. So we went on recruitment visits to Hawaii, to UC Irvine, where I am a faculty member now, and to Florida. And they just blew us away with their recruitment, their pitch and everything. And we ended up choosing to go there.
Oh, that is amazing. And then you did, as you mentioned, ultimately end up there at UC Irvine. And you have so many cool projects going on, Donovan. I'd love to dive into them. So do you have a favorite you want to tell us about?
Well, the real star of the lab has a great name. Its name is the monkey-faced prickleback.
Ooh.
It is an herbivorous fish, which means it lives here on our coast and eats red and green algae and is able to subsist on something that's really low in protein, low in lipid, high in carbs. So a lot of our work centers around understanding what it is that this animal does, especially in the gut, to do this. And one of the more modern ways we've been delving into this now is we've sequenced their genome. So we have the whole genome now of this fish. And when you start looking at it, one of the neatest areas is in terms of areas where there's been changes or selection on their genome towards their biology is in lipases, or the enzymes that digest lipid. And again, they're eating a low lipid food, something that's like 5% lipid or something like that. That's fascinating because you wouldn't think that an herbivore would invest in all this crazy machinery for lipids if it's such a low part of their diet. But the flip side is also true, where if something is a limiting nutrient, like lipids in this case, and you need to get essential fatty acids and things like that from your diet, you might actually also invest in that to make sure you get it, like scavenge for it. And we think that's what they're doing. So they've really expanded the number of copies of the genes they have to digest lipids. And it's really fascinating because these are the exact lipases, or enzymes that digest lipids, that you would need to make a living on algal lipids. Now, if you look at aquaculture, of course, we mostly are growing things that are carnivores in aquaculture. They have different ways of digesting lipids than these herbivores do. Yet, in order to keep costs down, we want to be able to feed these carnivores lipids that are from plants. We want to start feeding them more plant ingredients, but they're not doing well on that, right? You try to give a salmon a bunch of plant material or protein derived from plants and lipids derived from plants. They don't do well on it. We're sort of with aquaculture in this conundrum of wanting to get away from using animal feeds towards using more plant-based feeds because it's cheaper, it's less polluting, so on and so forth. But yet those animals don't have the machinery to deal with it. But this monkey-faced prickleback does. So the way I'm looking at this is not culturing monkey-faced prickleback to eat. I think they grow too slowly. but they provide insight into what the machinery is needed to actually make a living on plant material. So maybe we can make a very simple fix by getting their lipase genes into salmon or something like that to help them be able to break down the plant-based feeds. And then voila, we can have a productive aquaculture using plant-based ingredients.
Very interesting. And I'm curious, though they might not be ideal for aquaculture. Is the mucky-faced prickleback fish edible?
Oh, yeah. Not so much down here in Southern California because they're kind of rare down here. But you get up on the Central Coast, you get to San Francisco, and they are. They call them the mucky-faced eel up there because the fish is elongate like an eel, but it's not an actual eel. Hence, I refuse to call it one.
Right. It's not technically correct.
Right. But yeah, when they have people do a type of fishing called poke pulling in the intertidal up there, like in the tide pools and whatnot, and when they get enough of them, you'll see it show up as a delicacy on high-end restaurants. They'll have it out on their little signs on the sidewalk, monkey-faced eel. It's like $30 a plate, and it's a delicacy. It's really good. And I even spoke with someone recently who said at their wedding, they served monkey-faced eel.
Oh, wow.
And everyone was really happy. But like I said, they take like 5 years to mature. So that's kind of slow growing to be able to really use them in aquaculture.
Gotcha. That makes sense. We've hinted at some of the challenges in the work that you do, and I love breaking down some of the challenges on our show so that listeners kind of understand what the life of a scientist is like and what some of the challenges that you face in the work that you do are. So, Donovan, do you have a favorite story of yours of a failure or a challenge or just a struggle that you've gone through?
Well, for one, I went into my dissertation work thinking that, so I worked on these wood-eating catfishes from the Amazon for my Ph.D. And again, animals that weird things, how do they do it? So I went into that thinking that it was going to be all about microbes, and they're going to be kind of like termites or beavers. And the title of my dissertation was Beavers of the Fish World.
Oh, wow.
So thinking that they're going to have these crazy guts with microbes in there to help them break down wood. And it turned out, no, not so much. They just they do chew on the wood, much like a parrotfish chews on the reef, but they're going after more of the microbial biomass that's in the wood than they are the wood itself. Because the wood they're eating is degrading, right? It's already being decomposed. So there's a big microbial biomass on that wood. So they're just going after the good stuff, basically, that's embedded in that wood matrix. So my entire dissertation was an exercise in going in with a hypothesis, thinking things were going to happen one way, and there's one thing after the other saying no, 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 until I did like 8 different tests, and they all said the same thing. These guys aren't digesting wood with the aid of symbionts in their guts. So it was just a really good exercise in negative results over and over and over again before you finally realize that maybe your hypothesis is just flat wrong and that you have to adjust how you think about it. And it led me down this path to really think about digestion in a different way and realizing that there's different strategies an animal can take. You can either be reliant on microbes on one end and take a long time to digest, kind of like a cow does, or you could just pass it through the gut super fast, like in 4 hours, and just go for the easy stuff. Basically, that realization happening from all those negative results helped me develop my entire research plan that my lab is now based on, which is this kind of rate versus yield trade-off in digestion. And had I not gotten all those negative results, I would have never really come to that realization. So that was really important. Some other funny little anecdotes. One time I was doing a water change, thankfully, in the basement aquarium room there at Florida. And I put the hose in the big 300-gallon tank, and I walked out of the room for a minute thinking, oh, I'm going to be right back. And I never came back.
Oh, no.
And it was like 3 a.m, and I woke up, oh, I left the hose on. So I go back in there. There's fish on the floor.
Oh, no.
Thankfully, it was Florida where water's not an issue. But yeah, it was just like one of those deals where I had to clean it all up. And if that was on the 5th floor or something, that building, I would have destroyed everything below that, right?
Mm-hmm. You were just lucky it hadn't made it up to the 1st floor yet, right?
Oh, there were drains in the room.
Oh, good.
So it wasn't filling up the room. It didn't even make it out under the door either because of those drains.
Gotcha.
But if you overstress a floor enough, it can still leak if you're on an upper floor. So I was just really lucky that I didn't cause any problems that way.
Well, I'm so glad you shared this story because I think it shows that even scientists can make some of these silly mistakes, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're not immune to them.
One other funny one, too, is like during my master's work, I was working on digestive enzyme assays, really becoming a biochemist after spending more of my undergrad doing more ecology. So just going through that process, it took a year for me to figure out an enzyme assay for the enzyme trypsin. And at first, I just thought I was really dumb because I wasn't following a protocol right or something like that. But it turned out that the method I was using was actually wrong. So I had to go back to an original paper from like 1960 and kind of retrace everything to get it right. And if I hadn't had to do that, I wouldn't have realized it was really wrong in the first place. So that led me to basically formulate a whole new way of measuring this enzyme that wasn't really in the literature combined the way I did it. So that was another example of just kind of not giving up on something just because it was failing.
Definitely. Well, I'm so glad you shared these stories. And it sounds like these experiences were great learning opportunities for you at these different stages of your career. But we don't just want to focus on the difficult times, Donovan. I'd love to talk about some of your successes as well. So do you have a favorite success story or two you'd like to share with us?
Sure. So going back to my dissertation work, like I said, I did about 8 different ways of examining digestive physiology in these wood-eating fish. And everything was kind of, again, pointing against them being these beaver-like fish, if you will, with this real reliance on microbes in their gut. But one piece of information that would really help is how quickly it moves through the gut, right? How quickly does stuff go from the mouth and all the way on out? So I did an experiment where I dyed wood red with carmine dye. And if you've had ruby red grapefruit juice, you've had carmine dye. It's a pretty common food ingredient to add coloring, right? So I stained the wood red. I fed it to these fish. Because I wasn't smart enough, their light schedule was on the same schedule as ours, but these animals are nocturnal. So I had to go in at midnight to start an experiment when the lights were out. And so I let them feed on this red wood, and I went in to go exchange it. After just 4 hours, I was going to take the red wood away and replace it with non-red wood, just regular wood, then follow that pulse of red through the gut. And when I went in there at 4 hours, there was already red poop in the tank.
Oh, wow. That's fast.
Yeah, it's incredibly fast. And their gut was several meters long. So when you start doing the math, it was almost a meter an hour that the food was moving through their gut. And I joke that if that was you or I, we're very sick if our things moving that fast through our gut. But that's how these guys work. Again, they eat a lot and pass through the gut quickly and just get the easy stuff. So I went at the 4 hour point. There was already feces. Went at the 6 hour point, there's even more. And again, I was tracing the pulse through. So I remember emailing my committee at 4 a.m. because I'd been up all night. And the title of the email was Linchpin, because this was the linchpin that held it all together in terms of everything else agrees with what I just found. And this makes it all true. So that was definitely an exciting day, or morning, if you will, having that experience. And there's been many like that. I mean, 3 Ph.D. students have graduated now from my lab, and they've had many days like that where they're just getting really cool data and are so excited about it. And that's what keeps you going, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to sort of celebrate maybe that moment when everything comes together. So how did you celebrate in this example with the fish during your dissertation?
Oh, man, I think that morning I probably just went home and went to bed because we had a young child at that point, so we already weren't sleeping well. I think I was just more excited to go home and hit the hay, but just really excited to be able to write about it and share it. So I wasn't really on social media other than Facebook at that point, I think. So I think now I would have been tweeting like crazy about it and maybe having a frosty beverage or something. But you got to celebrate the little wins when they happen, for sure.
Exactly. Well, it's been great to hear about some of your research projects. And I know as a scientist, it's easy to get completely absorbed in the literature and spend a lot of time reading about your current area. But I also love to get book recommendations from everybody we have on the show to share with our listeners out there who might be looking for their next great book to read. So Donovan, do you have a favorite book that you can recommend for us today?
I have 2 favorite authors, actually, that I really like to share. And they're already pretty well known to a lot of people. So as part of my role here at UC Irvine, I teach human nutrition. So yes, I personally study fish and we work on animals in the lab, such as abalone and lizards. We work on all kinds of different organisms, but we're ultimately interested in nutritional physiology. So I'm definitely the right person to teach a human nutrition class about the gut and everything. So through my preparations for that class, I came across Michael Pollan's books on nutrition, like Omnivore's Dilemma, In Defense of Food, Food Rules, and Cooked is one of his more recent ones. So those books are absolutely amazing. Omnivore's Dilemma is really great just for understanding our food system and where our food comes from and how broken our system is. And then Cooked is great for understanding the evolution of cooking in human history and why that matters so much about like when we figured out how to cook certain ways and what that meant for cultural diversification and food types. I mean, it's just fascinating reads that are really well written in a fun way. And then the other big author I like is Robert Lustig, who's actually a pediatric endocrinologist up at UCSF, San Francisco. And he's really leading the charge against sugar, that is sucrose, fructose, like table sugar, high fructose corn syrup. He's got a great book called Fat Chance that is really worth reading. And I think once you read that, you will immediately stop drinking soda and realize that this sweet stuff is actually killing us pretty rapidly, actually. So Omnivore's Dilemma, definitely from Michael Pollan's side, and then Fat Chance from Robert Lustig's side have really been transformative in my household, in my life, and in my teaching.
Excellent. Well, Donovan, thank you for these recommendations. We will add them to our list on our website for our listeners to find there. We've talked about a lot of different aspects of your research, but we haven't yet talked about some of the opportunities that you've had to travel. And I know this is a big part of the life of a scientist, whether it's for fieldwork, conferences, working with collaborators. You are traveling a fair amount. So do you have a particular place that was just the most memorable that you visited for science?
I often put up a slide, again, in that same lecture where I talk about my scientific journey, just to show all the places I've been because of research or a conference, for example. So the southernmost place I've been is Antarctica, and I went there as a research experience for undergrad student. So right at the end of my undergrad, I went through Scripps Institution of Oceanography, UCSD, and I was able to go down there for a month, and we were on a biological oceanography expedition with Dr. Ken Smith as the principal investigator. And I was able to be selected for that and go down. So that was phenomenal, being able to go to Antarctica. But we came in and out of Chile and Punta Arenas. And so I was able to spend some time in Chile after that. So that was a unique experience right there. And then one that just happened last month, which I think is a unique opportunity. So the European academic system is different from the US one, where when they do their final defense, they actually invite opponents who are experts in their field to come and examine the student at the end. So you basically get to grill the person for half an hour, right? So what's nice is they'll invite people from all over the place, and it's usually the chairperson of the committee, the professor, will invite someone they're interested in maybe developing a collaboration with as well. So it's a unique kind of networking opportunity as well. So I just was invited to and went to Norway to go serve as an opponent on a dissertation defense. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's just not some place I would necessarily point on a map and say, I want to go there. So it was phenomenal. My wife and I were both able to go. It was an amazing trip. Got to do a fjord cruise and obviously engage in some great scientific discussions. Unique opportunity for sure.
So did you ask some tough questions as one of the opponents on the board there?
I did. Mm-hmm. I definitely asked a lot. I will say, though, the other opponent was harsher than I was.
Gotcha.
And deservedly so. I was definitely brought in as more of the general overview kind of examiner, and the other person was an expert in the method they used. And so it was their role to really get down to the nitty gritty on that.
Very cool. And you mentioned you were able to do a little bit of sightseeing while you were in Norway. If our listeners or myself have an opportunity to go, what is one thing we must absolutely do?
Well, we did this Norway in a nutshell, and it sounds corny, and it kind of is, but at the same time, you do get to see a lot in a short period of time. You get to take some old school trains, and they stop like in the mountains, and you can take some really cool photos and see different places. And then, of course, you get to go on a boat on a fjord cruise, which was phenomenal. So pretty to see everything, because I'd never really seen fjords before, so that was really nice.
Absolutely. And I know your trip to Antarctica was a little while ago. But what was it like going to Antarctica?
Oh, it's phenomenal. So getting to go down there, we went to a place called Deception Island, which is actually an old volcanic caldera. You go in the middle of that mountain, basically, it's submerged, but the ring of mountains is still there above the water. So we were in the center of the mountain there in a boat, as funny as that sounds, and using that as the study system where we put out all kinds of instruments to study movements of krill and fish and stuff through time and try to couple that with ice cover on the top. So that was just an amazing place to go down there and see what life was like on a boat, because we were pretty much on a boat for a month, living in tight quarters. Interpersonal interactions get kind of interesting because it's like you can get out and go somewhere. You're on a 230-foot vessel, only so many places you can go. Right. So that was really a great experience on a number of levels, but seeing all the different animals that we were catching, getting onto the land and seeing penguins there was definitely life-changing, because I never thought I'd see penguins in person in the wild. It was definitely a phenomenal experience, and it was right when I was finishing my undergrad, so it was really inspirational. The limits to what you can do, or there is no limit really, right? You can ask some really big questions and do some neat things that way.
Oh, that is phenomenal. I'm so glad you shared some of these stories of your travel experiences in science, because I think it is a wonderful aspect of the career. And we've hinted throughout our conversation also just at some of the great people you've been able to work with. And I know that's not always the rap we get in the media as scientists. I think oftentimes people see scientists as being very serious and critical all the time. But I know there are so many amazing, creative, wonderful people in science, and funny things happen when you put them all together, maybe in tight quarters on a boat. But do you have any particular traditions or just funny memories that you've shared with colleagues that really highlight this human side of science that you can share with us?
Definitely. I think drinking tea is really an important part of lab culture. And that's something I learned in Michael Horn's lab at Fullerton. So we would frequently have tea as we were discussing important lab things or reading papers or whatever. And it just made it more of a social time too. Like, we were definitely doing science, but it was definitely more interactive and social, not just about academics. And oftentimes he would take us to the spring tea garden in Fullerton. And that's the type of place where you have to wear a hat. So we would all wear different tea hats and enjoy our tea. So I definitely appreciated that tradition. So we often have tea at lab meetings now in my lab too. I don't make them wear hats though.
You should. It could be fun.
That could be fun. But that was one of the best pictures. It was actually hanging in the hallway outside of our lab for a long time, was us in silly hats. I think mine had some sort of mesh coming down, like kind of covering my face. It was really good. And the fact that the Spring Tea Garden has an assortment of hats for you to wear tells you they take their hat wearing very seriously. So it's definitely, I think, a tradition is to keep lab activities still social events so we can enjoy each other's company too, and not just be picking apart a paper or whatever. And one other thing I'd done because of that is there's a great lecture series. It's actually by Herbie Hancock, the musician. These lectures called The Wisdom of Miles Davis, and he was delivering these at Harvard. So we've watched those in lab meeting because he really gets across the point that no one is just a musician. No one is just a scientist. No one is just a journalist. We're so much more than that as humans. And so I definitely want to try to encourage people to bring their whole self to the lab and not just be there as a scientist. So I think those kinds of traditions are really important.
Absolutely. Well, I think you brought up so many important points here, Donovan. And I love this tea tradition that you have in the lab. And I'm a bit of a tea enthusiast myself. So I have to ask, what is your favorite tea, or maybe the traditional tea that you often have?
I like an oolong tea for sure. Something but different flavor there. White teas really take well to having kind of fruitier flavors. So there's a coconut pomegranate white tea I really enjoy. And then one of my favorites is actually pretty simple. It's a coconut black tea. If I need some caffeine, so I want to go with a breakfast tea or something, there's this coconut black tea with vanilla actually also on there. That is delicious.
Well, it sounds amazing. And I'm so glad you talked about this lighter side of the lab and some of the fun things you've been able to do with colleagues in science, because I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes on scientists to answer some of these big questions that they are working on in the lab. And I think oftentimes there are challenges that we talked about, or there are limitations that you face in terms of funding or feasibility or staff or time or whatever the case may be. So, Donovan, if we took away all of the barriers that you typically face in your science, what is the one question that you would most want to answer?
If I had infinite resources and didn't have any barriers to anything, there's two things I would want to get at. For one, would definitely be really digging down to understand why fructose is so bad for us. I think we have a lot of good information now. Unfortunately, I think a lot of it gets muddled by corporate science that is different. They're trying to protect the bottom line. The academic science can be very different from that. So I think really getting it down to the crux of that and being able to broadly disseminate that in a way that makes it clear that, look, type 2 diabetes is a real problem because of fructose. Not that there's not other reasons there, but this is a major player. You look on the websites and stuff, sugar is not listed as the main cause or a preventive measure. You have to get way down on the list. It's always, well, you're overweight and you need to exercise. Well, why are we overweight? We're overweight because our food is terrible. And our food's terrible because it's all laden with sugar. Everything that's processed has sugar at it. So being able to really get that clearly disseminated and into the psyche of our culture, I think would be really important. I think that would be one. And the other, of course, has to do with microbiomes and thinking about gut microbes, because I feel like there's a lot of Nobel Prizes waiting to be won, understanding gut microbes relating to obesity or disease, autoimmune disorders. So I feel like if I had unlimited resources, I would definitely go towards that too, to uncover those kinds of issues.
Fantastic. Well, Donovan, you've given me and our listeners some fascinating food for thought here for our afternoon. And I'd love to talk about advice next. I think often for scientists out there or aspiring scientists who might be listening, it can be really helpful to get advice at different critical points in their careers. So for you, when you look back, is there one particular piece of advice that really stands out that someone gave you that really helped you that you can pay forward today?
Follow your passion. What got me into research originally was marine critters, right? Thinking about marine critters and how they are able to do what they do. That was getting me out of bed in the morning to like, wow, I get to study that. And it still does. So I think not losing that passion for what it is that drove you in the first place. I think oftentimes we're forced to make choices, tough decisions, right? About life, about making money, about family, whatever, but to not lose sight of what you really want to do. Whether it's snakes or whatever that gets you into science, don't lose that. It's okay to get more specific, and obviously you got to chase some funding. So obviously at some point you need to have fundable ideas, right? But at the same time, to not forget the thing that got you there in the first place, because you still are going to get inspired by that.
Absolutely. I think that is such a good piece of advice because I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in the deadlines, the publications, everything you're trying to push out. It's easy to lose sight of that one thing that really got you excited about in the first place. So great advice for our listeners. Is there any other last piece of advice you'd like to share or a last note of inspiration you want to leave us with today, Donovan?
Just to listen to people. It's really important to listen to people, especially, in the job that I have, the academic environment, it can be really tough and really hard on people. And in the past, it's been kind of like, well, you ain't going to cut it if you can't just deal with the harshness of academia. And I think that's changing now because I think we're starting to listen to each other. We're starting to realize that mental health isn't something we have to take care of, right, of each other. So just really listening to others around you, picking up on what's going on and trying to help, trying to make yourself available. So when you do that, what's crazy is you end up with a line of people out your door who want to talk to you because you're willing to listen. And that tells you that there's a problem with people listening, or not enough of us anyway. So I think that's really important, is to listen to others and try to help any way you can and not be too judgmental about stuff because everyone has different experiences.
Absolutely. Well, that is a wonderful note to end our conversation on. Donovan, if our listeners want to learn more about you, more about your research and your lab, where should they go or how should they get in touch?
A good place to start is my website, which is my last name, German, German, .bio.uci.edu. And then email-wise, it's just dgerman, German, @uci.edu. On Twitter, @dgermanuci. If you follow me on Twitter, like 90% of what I tweet about is science, of course. Science and academic interactions like I was just discussing, listening to people, whatever it is, Me Too STEM, things like that. But also, you have to take a little bit of dose of Gators football because having gone to University of Florida, I was there when they won 2 national titles and Tim Tebow was there. So I got hooked. I'm a big time Gators fan. So if you follow me on Twitter, you're going to see a little bit about Gators football too.
I like it. A healthy mix of prickleback fish and football. So
that's right.
Perfect. Well, listeners, definitely follow Donovan on Twitter. Get in touch if you have any questions. Donovan, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. It's been great to chat with you. Listeners, wonderful to have you here as well. We'll see you next time on another episode of People Behind the Science.